Manly Hall Official is glad to produce, publish and offer The Mirror of Eternity. As I gazed at the light of the star which seemed a great way off in the deep haze of the magic mirror, it twisted and turned and twinkled, and there arose from the broken, confused mass of swirling clouds 12 mighty mountain tops that seemed to rival in height the lofty Himalayas, in the heart of whose hills I now stood gazing into the deathless mirror of eternity. As I watched, I saw the spark divide itself like a wondrous, bursting rocket, and one tiny gleam rested on the top of each of the 12 lofty mountains, where it glowed and shone like a ruby. Again, the question flashed into my mind, and once more it seemed that the Hindu read my thoughts, for he answered in his soft, musical voice, strangely stilled and quieted, "Those are the mountains of the 12 fates. Far up on the crags and crests of their lofty heights, in the sacred caves of the holy man, live the 12 compassionate brothers of humanity, and to each of them is drawn part of that tiny spark which now you see. Hark, my son, for they are calling you in the soundless depths of your soul. They bid you follow them and climb those same rocky crags, as it has been written by the hand of Brahma. Of all the world you have been chosen, for the gods know and man must obey." Again, I turned my eyes to the mirror, and as I looked closely into its deep blue ether, I saw lonely figures standing amid the glaciers that crowned like silver locks the peaks of the hills, 12 lonely forms from whose hearts gleamed forth the tiny stars like promises of the gods to all mankind. In strange contrast were these little lights of purest gold from the dull glow which rose upward from the base to break the darkness of eternal night that concealed forever the foot of these lofty hills. Far below were the flames of hate and that weird, broken world which my guide had told me was the land of the lonely ones. A strange hush came over my being, and I realized for the first time in a dull sort of way that there were things in life that before I had never known or understood, and in the depthless haze of that mystic frame, held between the golden fingers of the gods, a new world had been unfolded to me, a world invisible to mortal men, the mystic world of the soul. Still, I am ashamed to say that I understood but little of that scene, and it was more with curiosity than reverence that I passed through that night which I shall remember to the last moment of eternity. But then the compassionate one within myself was still unweakened, and it was only in the years that followed that my soul, mellowed and deepened by experience, fully realized the privilege that was mine that night when I stood in the temple of the caves with the ancient Hindu master. Slowly the scene in the great void changed, and there unfolded before my eyes a broken, rock-strewn coast where dashing waves broke with a mournful sound along the winding seashore. Somewhere in my dreams I had heard that sighing, and the broken crashes of the surf had sounded out from the depths of my own heart. But now I was seeing for the first time the wilderness and the desolation that I often had felt. If you're enjoying this video and finding value in the content, we kindly ask you to take a moment to subscribe to the channel. A large portion of our listeners and viewers haven't subscribed yet, and by doing so, you'll help us grow and continue bringing you more high-quality audiobooks. Your support means a lot to us, and it's just one click away. So, go ahead and hit that subscribe button to stay connected and never miss out on our latest releases. The dashing waves broke along a shoreline, high-strewn with the wreckage of scattered ships. As far as the eye could see, the dashing and never-ceasing waters cast broken crafts upon the rocky shore where they were ground to pieces by the endless tide. As I watched in the mirror a file of lonely figures, their white robes blown by the gale, came like phantoms from the darkness and walked silently along the shore. They picked up the wreckage and, seeming to whisper soft words to the broken timbers, they held them above their heads where the water-soaked and shattered wrecks were turned, it seemed, into wondrous birds that flew away with sweet songs or hovered around the heads of the lonely figures. There were 12 of these silent forms who passed like specters through the night, and finally walking out on the surface of the waves, which were stilled as they passed over them, followed by the shadowy file of birds created from the broken wreckage, they vanished in the gloom of a limitless horizon. The mirror cleared again. All that remained was the deep blue haze, as boundless as eternity itself. I turned eagerly to my companion for a more complete explanation of the strange phenomena. In the gloom of the temple, he seemed to gleam and glow with a strange light, and his robe appeared to be of shimmery gold and opal. "What does this all mean, one?" I asked in amazement, staring at the great eyes of the initiate. "My son," answered the old man in the same sweet voice, "this rock-strewn shore is life. These broken crafts of wreckage are the souls of men, while the white-robed figures represent the tiny band of servers who have dedicated themselves and their lives to the salvation and redemption of their fellow men. And with the love and power which is theirs they turn the broken wreckage into birds that with the life and truth which they have given may fly upward to the sun. Although you realize it not, you are one of this band. As they have sworn, so have you dedicated yourself to the salvation and regeneration of your brothers. You must be one who is to salvage the wreckage of despair and redeem the broken crafts of life. Although you know not your destiny, soon you will understand. You say that I have sworn and dedicated my life to some mystic end of which I know nothing, one I asked in amazement. Yes, my son, answered the white-robed Brahmin, and yet is this not true of all, one? Are not all living things working to an ultimate they can never comprehend, one? Yes, indeed, for none but Brahma know the ways of Brahma, yet all must serve him and walk the path that leads to him. And only when beyond the shades of nirvana man is one with Brahma will he know the end for which he came into being, or the works for which his master and creator has ordained him. From childhood to youth, from youth to manhood, from manhood to old age, from old age to dissolution, this is the path of those who know not Brahma. But for those who have seen the light of his shining face, the path is from life immortal to life immortal, with only this shell of not being for a moment and then eternity forever. My son, mysterious are the ways of Brahma, and yet those there are who have seen his face, who have listened to the words that dropped like pearls from the lips of the Creator, to rest like beads of dew on the lotus blossoms of the soul. The old Hindu's eyes seemed to pierce the wall into the endless eternity of not being, and he whispered to me, "My son, may it be that you shall see the face of Brahma, that the shining light of his eyes shall rest upon you, that the lips of compassion shall speak to you. For when you have seen as I have seen, naught else is there to see. For what can human eyes reveal to man after he has beheld his Creator? One, for Brahma is all in all, to all, for all. If you hunger and have seen the eyes of Brahma, you are fed. If you are cold and his face has been unveiled, you are warmed. If you are unclothed but have been enfolded in his light, you are garbed as the Prince of Men. If you are weary and have slept in his arms, you have had rest. If you are lonely yet have felt his presence, then indeed are the multitudes with you. If you are ignorant and have been within his power, then is wisdom yours. If you are sad and have seen him, then are you glad with the sadness of the divine. My son, seek ye for nothing but Brahma, for all else is Maya, illusion. When you have found him, you have found all. When you have not found him, you have nothing. Behold, all the love in the world is from the heart of Brahma. All the peace in the world is from the rest of Brahma. All truth is the word of Brahma. All light is the glory of his smile. My son, many long years have I lived in the darkness of this cave, and yet I am ever in the light, for I have seen Brahma. Though I am weak and old, I am young eternally, for the life of Brahma brings back the youth that is gone. The world knows me as the mouthpiece of the gods, a master of men, but I ask no glory, for it cannot come to me from the plaudits of the world. All that I ask is to be one with my Creator. Walk you the way that I have walked, until you too shall reach the footstool of Brahma, for behold, his ways are good and his compassion is everlasting. He alone can open the eyes that are blind and the hearts that are cold. Serve Brahma and live, serve men and die. Labor for Brahma and have peace, labor for man and have misery. Treasure up the things of the world and lose them, treasure up the pearls of Brahma, and they are yours forever. In the days when these hills were not, Brahma was. In the days when these mountains shall be no more, still Brahma is. For all that is Brahma, all that can be pours from his lotus lips. When you are one with Brahma, you are one with eternity. When you are one with men, you are measured by time. If you will live as Brahma would, then alone shall you be free from the wheel of birth and death, and rest in nirvana as one with that which is, yet is not, yet ever shall be. My son, I speak the words of Brahma, in the name of Brahma, for the glory of Brahma, for there is no other Father, no other God. Be glad to serve him, for he is just. Be glad to glorify him, for he will ornament you with the jewels of immortality. Oh, that men might know Brahma and live. But come, look again, and I will show you how you have dedicated your being to Brahma, and how again you are to anoint yourself upon his altar in the name of the living God, O One the Unknowable. Again, I gazed into the mystic mirror, and this time a new scene appeared there. It seemed a great pinwheel of light which, twisting and unrolling slowly, became a great spiral. The spiral took shape and a great scroll appeared, and on its mystic pages I saw history unroll, and a voice within whispered that it was mine. My guide spoke again, "This is the memory of the Eternal One. That golden star who now knows himself as William Edmondson." Slowly the scroll ceased to spin, and a scene unfolded itself in the mystic haze of eternity. It was an ancient plain which stretched out to be lost in the blue sky. Far in the distance there are two forms of clairvoyance, positive in the brain, negative in the solar plexus. Concentration upon the solar plexus is a step backward in evolution for the white races. The priests of Chaldea are said to have lived 1,000 years in one body, but there is no doubt that they had learned how to make better use of their time, for the average individual wouldn't do any more in 1,000 years than he does now if he had the chance of living. There arose great twisting towers of snake-like spirals which gleamed and glowed amid mighty domes and minarets that marked a city of the plains. It was a glorious sight, a shimmering city of many-colored lights like some mirage of the desert. "Behold the city of the golden gates," murmured the Oriental as he laid one hand on my shoulder. It seemed that I was passing across the mighty plains until at last, with the rapidity of lightning, I floated through its gilded gates and entered a strange, many-sided room, lighted by lamps of virgin oil and niches on the wall. But I was no longer myself as I know myself today. I was an old, gray-haired, bent man robed in blue and gold, carrying in my hand a cross which I raised upward to shadowy forms that gazed down from above, great specters that whispered of the days when gods walked with men. The Oriental spoke again. Here in the sacred temple of the lost island you took your vows to the compassionate ones. You took your oath that your being was dedicated to the realization of a great ideal. Today you are fulfilling your vows, and in the name of the gods I warn you, stay not the wheels of the infinite. The scene grew dark and blinding flashes of lightning and thunder broke upon the air, and a hideous roar swept over my senses. The sinking of the lost island, murmured the voice beside my ear. To be continued. The man who cannot see God and his brother will never find him anywhere else. The prayer most acceptable unto the Lord is the daily life in accordance with the plan of being. A quick temper is one of the greatest curses from which a student can suffer. If an occultist carries a chip on his shoulder, the laws of nature will knock it off. Just lonely. People realize the absolute loneliness which fills the heart of a large percentage of children. The little ones who come into the world are indeed strangers in a strange land, and the vehicles which they are seeking to build have not yet the power and consciousness that come in later life or should come. Indeed, in many cases we go through life without ever breaking down the wall of loneliness. There is a great obligation confronting parents, for most of them forget their own childhood, and, interested in other things, absorbed in their own lives, they seem to be unaware of the soul agony which so often fills the heart of a child that is eternally seeking for love and protection. While we hear the little one playing with the children, it seems to be happy, and yet often with the laughter and the smile the discerning eye sees a pathetic little look that tells of a lonely soul. As the years go by, there is often built around the child a wall which not even the parent can pierce, for in many homes the parents know less about their children than the stranger on the street, for the comradeship, the understanding, the mutual love is lost, because the lonely child has forgotten how to make a confidant of them. This generation is producing millions of lonely little souls to whom home means nothing but a shelter for the body, because self-centered and thoughtless parents have come to believe that because the child is young it does not feel. How many lives are broken, how many romances fall to pieces, because the child has been so lonely that it sought just someone to talk to, someone to make a confidant of, when at home a stone wall seemed built around it. A large number of children, instead of loving and confiding in their parents, either despise them or merely treat them with respect and regard in accordance with social obligations, and in the majority of cases it is because the parent has failed to plant the seeds of love and trust in the heart of the child. This condition is becoming more acute every day, for the world is filled with young people who are divided from the bonds of home by lack of mutual understanding. This is often the result of the fact that during the years of childhood and youth, when things were needed, the parents were not there. When there was work to do that the child might be what it should be, they shirked their duties and the child lost confidence. There is nothing sadder in all the world than to find a little child who has lost confidence in its parents, and yet at the present time there are few homes where a child can have real confidence, for a sweet temperament cannot be raised on forgetfulness, and the average child feels that it is in the way at home, so it goes out, and one of two things is the result. Either its little heart is chilled forever and it becomes self-centered, secretive, and often dishonest, or in its hunger for love it suffers all its life. At this day and age of the world, there are no more unhappy creatures in all the universe than children. Instead of being welcomed and their years of youth watched and guided, they are regarded from the very beginning as a nuisance and as something which stands between the parents and the gay pleasures of life. So slowly the child drifts into other company, mentally if not physically, and oftentimes it picks very poor associates, not because of criminal instinct or of malicious intent, but it went astray just because it was lonely. This condition faces us as a problem far greater than we generally understand. Many youths go into the business world or leave home because there was no companionship there for them. Many young girls have married at immature ages to escape the loneliness of home and to find someone whom they thought would be a friend. Too often this choice is unwise, but in nearly every case it is the result of the fact that there is no love and compassion and brotherhood in the home. The answer to the problem is this: the father and mother should not be the boss of the children. Children are not servants or slaves, and when treated as such and ordered around like puppets, they either sulk away determined someday to make a break, or else their spirits are crushed and they become useless chips of driftwood on the sea of life. No one likes a boss, children no more than the rest, and children who fear parents will never love them. Brotherhood must be born in the home where parents and children are tied together by the bond of mutual sympathy and understanding. Kindly and wisely like brothers, parents must love and labor with their children. For many a little one has gone away to weep alone when a scar has been made in the soul that will last to the end of time over the thoughtless cruelty of the parent or an unjust accusation. It is harshness and fear which make dishonest children and promote lying, stealing, and even worse habits. It is the lack of the feeling of brotherhood between parent and child that makes young children keep secrets which may injure them all their lives, whereas if confidence has been built, the wiser and more mature thoughts of the parent will save years of suffering. But the privilege of the parent to help the child is lost when that privilege is abused. So, we find thousands of children who are just lonely, who while they are properly fed and clothed are merely strangers boarding at home. This condition is the basis of a generation of lonely souls, broken and misunderstood, who crawl away to melancholia or else sell their souls for the sake of a kind word. There are few who realize the power that a parent has, and there are still fewer who realize how that power is abused today, when there is coming into the world a generation of lonely children, great souls who will never be understood and always blamed for the lack of those very virtues which the parents should have stimulated. As you read this article, there are many of you who will recognize how your own lives have been twisted and changed by loneliness in childhood and the fact that you never were understood, and this should be a divine incentive within the soul of every parent that when young hearts come to them, they shall be understood and not be just little strangers in a strange land, lonely and forgotten. Occult eugenics. Occultism is a very unusual study. Many people enter into it in the hope of being transported into mystic worlds where hooded figures and strange lights flit through somber ruins. They believe that they will gain strange powers and great riches and find a world of happiness overnight. This is very far from the truth, and the student will find as he goes along that occultism is not a doctrine of miracles but of cause and effect, not of shortcuts but of slow, ever-increasing development, not of romance and glamour, but of serious study and self-improvement. It means not only to delve into forgotten lore, but to consider with uncommon common sense life and its many problems. To the brave student it offers the great incentive of justice and a sure reward. To the coward and those who seek to shirk the duties of life it stands a looming mystery, a great giant between them and the easy road to happiness and success for which they seek. Good or evil, depending upon the eyes that see it and the hands that apply it, but, standing in spite of all, the mystery school remains unmoved from the first great dawn of creation to the last falling shadows of a dissolving universe. It offers no incentive other than truth, no reward other than a greater power to help your fellow men. The occultist must take his occultism into his life, his works, and his ideals. One place alone is the source of the joys and sorrows of the world, and from the half-closed lips of that looming mystery which man knows as the occult wisdom there comes forth these words: the strength of a people depends upon the harmony, unity, and virtue of its homes. The great problem of eugenics faces the world at the present time as it never has before, because under it is listed the study of causes and the improvement of causes, and the world is slowly coming to the realization that everything we know as an effect is the result of unknown and unstudied causes. Man with his ever higher ideals now realizes that the day has come when it is in his power to mold the world into what he wishes it to be, greater and more glorious than ever before, if he will mold causations and develop them as he should. Man is beginning to realize that he cannot grow roses on a thistle plant, neither can wisdom thrive on ignorance, but that by the natural law of attraction each plant that we know bears fruit according to its kind, and under the head of eugenics man is studying to build only those conditions and causes which will produce constructive, elevating effects. Eugenics not only holds good in the building of physical forms, but also in political, scientific, social, and religious body and soul building. We are in every case the causes that will produce the effects, mental and physical, which shall mold the great tomorrows as yesterday is molding us, and it is our duty to our God, our brother, and ourselves to study and live by the knowledge we have gained more in harmony with the divine plan for man. There are listed below 25 condensed statements for the consideration of students of eugenics and its various forms. The proof of these statements can easily be found by anyone who will spend even a short time in the consideration of living problems. It is suggested that the student take them one at a time and see just to what extent they are true in the surroundings of his life. If he wishes to be an occultist, a mystic, or even a healthy heathen, he should not only consider them, but if he agrees with them, practice them in his own life and among those with whom he comes in contact. First, the intellectual, spiritual, and evolutionary progress of a race depends upon the ability of higher evolved egos to find proper vehicles of physical expression among the homes and parents of that race. At the present time they are needed in the world as never before, but they can only come where they will find harmony and purity, knowledge and love. When these conditions express themselves as causes in our race, the effect will be power, growth, and balanced genius. Second, in this world like attracts like, and the same is true of the ego seeking incarnation. It will come where it can receive the growth needed for its own spiritual extension. Therefore, ignorance draws ignorance, wisdom draws wisdom, squabbling draws squabbling, and the little ones drawn to the home of man today will sometime rule our world with the same powers which attracted them and with which we are surrounding their young lives. Third, Inharmony in a home where a highly developed ego is striving to gather its new body for manifestation here invariably results in one of two things. Either the ego, the spirit, will withdraw from that family because it cannot stand the vibratory rates, or else it will have the finer side of its nature and its usefulness here impeded or dwarfed. In both cases, the thoughtless parents are guilty in the eyes of the spiritual law of murder in the first degree. Fourth, there is a very mistaken idea in the minds of many parents concerning the faculties of a child, mental and spiritual. During its younger life and approximately up to 10 ages of majority, it is completely under the mental and spiritual supervision of the parent who is responsible to God and man roar the qualities which are implanted in the offspring. Fifth, a child is born clairvoyant and remains so varying lengths of time under different conditions, usually until the soft spot in the crown of the head closes. This makes it possible for the child to feel things and see things which the parent does not realize. Children know what their parents are thinking and doing even when they are apart. Therefore, it does no good to kiss the child goodnight very sweetly, tell it to love everybody and be good, then go downstairs and have squabbles and disagreements such as occur in many homes, and believe that the child does not know and will not be affected by it. Sixth, by example as well as by precept must children be trained. If you tell a child to do a thing and you do something different, you must not be amazed that the child follows your example. We cannot lie to children and then expect them to be truthful. It is often a wonder how children have as much respect for their parents as they do, and it shows that the little one has in many cases a higher sense of justice than the parent. No parent has a right to blame a child and punish it for a fault the parent has himself, until first of all he has sought to correct it in his own being. Seventh, not ignorance but a thorough understanding of nature's plan is the basis of all virtue, and the parent who has not given its child an understanding of life's problems has failed in its most sacred duty and lost its greatest opportunity for self-development. Eighth, in the Orient there is a rule followed that should teach the Western world a wonderful lesson. Life there is divided into three great divisions. In the first third of life the ego is guarded and taught by its parents the duties of life. In the second third the grown person raises his family and takes care of his parents. He also earns the funds to take care of his life and those who depend upon him. And in the last third he in his turn is taken care of by his children and allowed to study and meditate. This system cannot be applied in full in this country, it seems, but it has many good points to be considered. Ninth, a parent should remember that children don't just grow but require attention all the way through childhood. In America at the present time no attention at all is paid to the average child, and it runs wild until it disconcerts the entire neighborhood. And then the father and mother, finding that the child is impossible, try to spank good manners one to it with failure as the usual result. At least 75% of parents use this system at the present time. Then these same people wonder why no one likes their children and why the landlords prefer lapdogs in their apartments to the young hopefuls, or rather hopeless generation of today. 10th, while on the study of eugenics, which means to be better born, or to have a more harmonious beginning, there are other children which we should consider as well as our visible families. Many millions of lives are evolving and depending upon us, about which the average individual knows absolutely nothing. It has been estimated that inside the physical body of man alone there are living, developing, and evolving 789 quintillion monads, each one of them incomplete, being made up of millions, yes billions, of still smaller beings. These depend upon the superior development of the human ego for wise and humane care. When we through thoughtlessness, indolence, or ignorance fail to properly supply and intelligently preserve these parts of ourselves, we break one of the most important laws of natural eugenics. 11th. When we read the story in the Bible of the Last Supper, do we ever stop to think how it is being repeated every day and minute of our lives? 7. Do you remember how the Master gave his disciples the bread and said, "This is my body broken for you"? 1. Let us remember that the Christ Spirit, the principle of life, is in all these cells, and that thousands, millions, of living things die daily that man may live. In the running down of the boy, many tiny forms must give up their vehicles of expression. The food that we eat is the tiny shell that our younger brothers have taken hours, weeks, and years to build. We owe these little lives a great debt of gratitude, and we have no right to abuse their confidence in, and injure them by misapplying the principles of nature. 12th. The smallest of lives has a God-given right to a chance of development and greater expression in the world of forms. Those who aid in the giving of these opportunities help each in his own way the development of the plan, and as we help others to express themselves, we gain greater ability to manifest our own latent qualities. 13th. One of the greatest mistakes that a parent can make is to overlook the health of a child or exert an undue influence over its growth on account of their own ideas concerning sickness and spirituality. While it is often possible through the power of will for the parent to master inharmony within, and while many believe that sickness is only a concept of the mind, this idea cannot be safely applied in dealing with children. Parents are directly or indirectly responsible for 90% of sickness among children, and large doses of common sense should be administered to the mother and father instead of drugging the child. 14th. A large percentage of the aches and pains of the human race come through the stomach, and that which goes into it sometimes through that which cannot get out of it. The adult must learn to take care of himself, but with the child the parents must use a different course and teach their children how to live in a clean, practical way. 15th. It is the duty of every adult in the United States and in all other parts of the world to spend enough time in the study of self to learn how to prevent the causes of disease which later wreck his body, if he does not learn in younger life how to use common sense in taking care of himself. Moreover, people who do not know these things can never hope to bring into the world or to raise healthy children. 16th. No one has the right to call himself a student of any line of higher philosophy, science, or religion, who does not understand the fundamental construction of his own being, mental, physical, and spiritual, and any teaching that promises spirituality, growth, or broadened consciousness that does not include these principles is not listed among the wisdom religions. 17th. It is said by those in position to know that a large percentage of adults in the so-called civilized countries have the brain development of 15-year-old children. In many it is much lower. This is undoubtedly the result of the fact that the ego coming into this world is forced to build its physical vehicles, including the brain, from the quality of material furnished by the parents. Therefore, 1 ton is up to the parents to build better bodies that the next generation may be greater mentally, spiritually, and physically than the present one, for the children of today are the lawmakers, teachers, and citizens of tomorrow. In this way, each generation is largely responsible for the next, and many people at the present time are laying up terrible karmic debts. 18th. It would seem that the world should know these simple principles of life, and many people consider that work of this kind is too elementary for spiritual students, yet the very persons who say this, and in fact nearly all of the occult students, while standing apparently on the tops of the mountains, are daily breaking practically every law in nature, and as they break them they tell the world they have become so great that they no longer need them. 19th. If you will read the day papers, you will find that during the summer months great numbers of children die. Few persons realize how many babies pass out before they reach their first birthday. People pray to God to spare their children and say the Lord took the little ones from them, when in reality they kill them through ignorance, indolence, or indifference, and this at an age of the world when all the needed information is within the reach of everyone. There is no need for such ignorance save that people do not care enough about life to learn how to live, and it is necessary for them to keep on dying to find out. 20th. It is very important that we understand that the ego coming into life is not born full-fledged, but through a gradual process in which one by one the vehicles of consciousness take hold, until youth reach the age of majority when it comes into control of its vehicles. The danger points in the life of a child gather around the 14th year when the fire or emotion body begins to be felt. It is then that uncurbed by thought the child is most subject to those mistakes which have ruined the lives of millions. It is during these periods that the greatest responsibility rests upon the parents, and it seems that at this time there are few willing to take the responsibility of giving the incoming egos the proper start in life. 21st. It is well for us to understand that occult eugenics not only teaches that man must produce better bodies, but that he must give birth to better thoughts, emotions, and actions. These are children of our own being for which we are just as responsible as for physical, visible children. With his evil thoughts man is breeding demons that will later pave his way with hardships and his world with suffering. In truth, the children of his consciousness must be better born. 22nd. Education is a very important consideration, and this must take a great place in the mind of the parent, for in order to educate children in the practical things of life, the parents themselves must first have knowledge of them. When we come to consider that less than 1 in 10 of American children receives a complete education, we are confronted with another very important matter that rests in the hands, directly and indirectly, of every adult in this country. 23rd. It is also of importance to remember that education consists of drawing out the latent qualities within the child rather than in cramming the mind, which in later life will be forced to forget many of the things it has learned in order to be practical. 24th. Parents should remember that they both have responsibilities in the rearing of their children. In the majority of cases at the present time, each is trying to shift the responsibility onto the other. Another curse is now springing into families at a deadly rate of speed, and this is the old story of the favorite child. In almost every home you will find children who are tolerated as necessary evils while another child is pushed forward and all attention heaped upon it. A condition of this kind shows that the moral and spiritual development of such parents is far below the average scale for animals, and they are a disgrace to the human race. The unbalanced and in many cases criminal actions of parents, if continued, will bring the destruction of our civilization. 25th. Young children are like parrots. They are the greatest mimics in the world. They only understand that which they can see, and somewhere either in their home or among their acquaintances will be found all the mean traits which they demonstrate. They act and live and talk the way they see the old folks do, so when little Johnny comes out in the yard and swears like a trooper, loses his temper, stamps around, and throws tin cans at the cat, it is merely a reflection of what he has seen someone else do. In other words, the baby and the youngster are the thermometer showing the temperature, mental, physical, and spiritual, of the parents, and the most powerful way of teaching a child is by example. This may sound as though it were a terrible rehash of antiquated precepts. It is. The entire civilization of the world for millions of years has depended upon the understanding of these principles. Our farmers have spent years in developing extra fine hogs and in learning how to produce the greatest amount of corn to an acre. In every line of business and enterprise, man is being taught efficiency except in the line which gives him the right to live. The work must be gone over again and again because 99 out of 100 people, if they know these things, show no symptoms of their knowledge. God must judge us by results. Read the daily newspapers and see if the world has passed the need of studying the practical problem of natural eugenics. Occultism does not tell man what to study or to what creed he should subscribe, but it takes him out and showing him things as they are tells him that his duty is to improve himself and his world in the best way that presents itself to him. By their works shall ye know them, unfolding consciousness of man which becomes his guide in the distant places and makes possible his ascent into the dome-shaped skull which is indeed the temple of the gods. Copyright 2025 by Manly Hall Official. Thank you for listening. Please consider to subscribe, like, and share to help the channel growth. New videos on a daily basis.